Touch that hook to my door and you will need a lawyer before sunrise. That is what I said, calm, even like I was reading a weather report. Mildred Bishop did not flinch. Her silver helmet of hair caught the yellow wash of the streetlight as she tilted her chin clipboard tucked under her arm like a holy relic. Community standards authorize emergency abatement, she said. Emergency is for fires, not feelings, I shot back. Her eyes narrowed. The tow driver looked between us, the kind of man who made a living by pretending not to exist. The hook in his hand gleamed in the half-light. That was the exact moment I realized this was not about the truck, it was about control, and I was not about to hand her mine. Rewind 20 minutes. Tuesday morning in River Raven County, the kind of suburban silence where even the sprinklers sound guilty. Then came that sound, a metallic scrape, long and deliberate, crawling through the still air. I froze mid-step with a coffee mug in my hand. Not raccoons, not the wind. Wrong rhythm, wrong intent. It was the sound of someone trying to break the peace, and doing it with purpose. I killed the kitchen light and moved to the window, slow and deliberate. Outside, the morning fog clung to the lawns, dew glittering like sweat under the street lamps. Down my driveway sat a tow truck engine, idling low hazard lights off, which was strange. No emergency, just waiting. A man in a grease-stained jumpsuit knelt near my garage, fiddling with a thin steel rod tipped with a hook. Behind him, in perfect suburban posture, stood Mildred Bishop, president of the River Raven HOA, the self-appointed queen of curb appeal. Even at dawn, she wore a beige pantsuit, sharp enough to cut glass. Clipboard. Pearls. Authority complex. I did not move. I just watched through the blinds, that slow, simmering kind of disbelief building in my chest. She raised a finger pointed at my garage door like she was directing a symphony of idiocy. The tow driver hesitated, then crouched. Metal kissed concrete. That tiny squeal of steel on aluminum hit me like a gunshot. That is my dad's truck in there, I thought. That is his smell, his seat, his sweat, embedded in the worn leather of a 1989 Ford F-150, the only thing I had not let go of when cancer took him 3 years ago. And she was trying to drag it out of my house like it was a weed. I thumbed the app on my phone. Security cameras came to life, clear as daylight. The driver slid the hook under the garage seal, trying to fish the latch like a car thief. Mildred's lips moved all clipped syllables and righteous indignation. The sheer arrogance of it was surreal. They were not repossessing a car from a parking lot. They were trying to tow through a wall. Every line of logic in my brain short-circuited. I did not shout, did not storm outside. Instead, I filled my mug, took one long sip, and decided to fight stupid with patience. The hallway light was off as I made my way toward the garage. My house felt alive, walls tight with tension, air heavy with the hum of a fridge and the tick of a clock. When I reached the inner door, I unlatched the safety lever from the motor track, disengaging the automatic opener. Then, I slid the steel deadbolt down into the concrete cradle, a sound so satisfying it could have been applause. The muttering outside stopped instantly. They had heard it. For a few seconds, silence. Then what was that? Mildred's voice cut sharp through the metal. I smiled. That, I whispered, was step one. I leaned close to the cold aluminum door, heartbeat steady. The driver murmured something about bad latch. Mildred hissed, "Get it open." I pressed my ear closer, the sound of the hook tapping against the seal, then pulling away. Frustration. I pictured her eyes, that furious squint she reserved for trash bins an inch out of line. It gave me more pleasure than I would like to admit. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and hit the doorbell mic. "Morning, Mildred. Beautiful day for felony." She looked straight at the camera, her mouth twitching like she had tasted something sour. "This is an authorized abatement," she snapped. "Cool. I am authorizing coffee." Click. I dialed the sheriff's department. "Non-emergency line," the operator said. "Good," I said, calm. "Because what is happening is not technically an emergency. Just technically insane." She laughed, just a tiny, tired laugh. "What is your address, sir?" 112 Willow Creek. "There is a woman and a tow truck trying to fish my truck through my garage door." Pause. I am sorry, what? Yeah. They are trying to perform garage surgery. Is your vehicle visible from the street? Nope. Unless you have got X-ray vision. Another pause. Typing. We are sending a unit. By the time Sheriff Brody pulled up, the sky was turning gold behind the rooftops. His cruiser rolled to a stop behind the tow truck. Quiet, no siren. Brody stepped out like a man walking into a bad joke he had heard before. Tall, lean eyes that looked perpetually unimpressed. He surveyed the scene, Mildred, clipboard, hook, all of it, and sighed. I watched through my camera feed as he strolled up the driveway. No rush, no threat. Just authority distilled into patience. Mildred launched into her speech before he even spoke. Her voice was sharp, almost theatrical. This man's vehicle violates community aesthetic code. Brody raised one hand. Garage counts like inside his house. No court order, no entry. Mildred's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She pointed to the clipboard like it was divine scripture. Brody leaned in, glanced at it, then at the tow driver. Son, he said, if you like your job, unhook that. The driver nodded so fast his hat nearly fell off. Within seconds, the tow line retracted hook clanging against the steel bed. Mildred tried one last shot. You cannot stop lawful enforcement. Brody just smiled, the kind that ends arguments. Ma'am, I am not stopping it. I am preventing stupidity. She turned crimson, snapped her clipboard shut, and stormed off. The tow truck followed, slow, shameful. Brody stood there for a moment looking at my door, then at the camera above it. Mr. Hoffman, he called out, his voice carrying through the mic. People like her do not quit, they just reload. I stepped out, coffee still in hand. Yeah, I said quietly. I figured. He looks tired, the kind of tired you only earn by cleaning up other people's ego for 20 years. Just keep your cameras rolling, he said. I nodded. Always do. He gave me a half salute and got back in his car. The tow truck's taillights vanished over the hill. The street went still again. Except, this time, it was not peaceful. It was waiting. By noon, I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. When I came back from the mailbox there, it was a cream-colored envelope tucked neatly into my door handle. Embossed logo, HOA seal. Inside, a violation notice. My crime. Unauthorized noise disturbance wind chimes. I actually laughed. Of course it was the wind chimes, the ones my mother gave me 10 years ago. They made a sound softer than a whisper. I looked up at them, swaying gently in the breeze, and said out loud, "She has lost her mind." I called Leo. He picked up on the second ring. "She is after your wind chimes now," he said, voice already cracking with laughter. "Yep, noise pollution apparently." "Oh, that is it. This is war." "It is not war," I said. "It is harassment wrapped in stationery." Same thing he said. "So escalation." I smirked. "Maybe by 3 p.m. I had ordered 3 more sets of wind chimes, steel, glass, and one that promised chaotic musical resonance. When they arrived, I hung them all. My porch sounded like an orchestra led by a caffeinated ghost. That night I poured a beer, sat back, and listened to my defiant symphony clanging against the wind. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. But under the laughter, I felt something shift, the kind of quiet that does not come from peace, but from plotting, because I knew Mildred Bishop was not done. She had failed to break in, failed to scare me with paper, and that meant one thing. She would find another way, and when she did, I would be ready. It started again at 10:07 p.m. The sound was not loud this time, just a faint click, slide click, that did not belong in a quiet street. I muted the TV, leaned toward the window, and caught a glimpse of movement in the dark. There, creeping along my fence line like a burglar in beige, was Mildred Bishop, armed with a flashlight and a tape measure. She stopped every few feet, bending down, stretching the tape, jotting notes like a crime scene investigator documenting her own insanity. The fence, the one my dad and I built with our bare hands, was exactly 6 feet tall down to the millimeter. But she measured it anyway, desperate to find even a half-inch of rebellion she could weaponize. In the grainy night vision of my security camera, her expression was priceless jaw, tight lips, pursed the face of a dictator foiled by math. At one point, she kicked one of the posts, muttered something I could not hear, and scurried away across the street like a raccoon that realized the trash was locked. I called my cousin Andy. "Guess what your HOA president is doing right now," I said. He paused. "Digging a moat around your driveway." Close. "Measuring my fence." Damn. "You need geese, Nate. Big angry ones." "No one messes with geese." I laughed despite myself. "Pretty sure that is against 3 county codes and 2 war crime treaties. Still worth it," he said. But even with the jokes, something inside me tightened. It was not about the fence. It was about escalation, that creeping quiet type that makes your skin itch because you know it is leading somewhere worse. The next morning, a certified letter arrived, thick envelope, gold seal, and that ridiculous HOA logo, embossed like royal stationery. I signed for it already, feeling the dread settle in my stomach. The letter was 5 pages of legal theater, citing obscure bylaws about non-operational vehicles and environmental hazards. It claimed my father's truck was unsafe, and that if I did not remove it within 7 days, they would tow it and place a lien on my property. At the bottom was a golden crest, with an eagle that looked like it belonged on Monopoly money. I read it twice. It was a fake. A forged, pompous, self-important piece of scare paper designed to intimidate. Mildred had finally crossed from annoyance into manipulation. I laid it on my desk and stared at the ridiculous Latin motto beneath the seal, Vitae Aesthetica Supremum. Apparently, that meant aesthetics above all. I could almost hear her saying it at meetings like a queen quoting scripture. But beneath the absurdity, there was venom. This was not a petty HOA letter anymore. It was a declaration of war disguised in serif font and cheap intimidation. For the next 2 days, I tried to ignore it. I worked from home, buried myself in code, told myself she would get bored, but the tension did not leave. It sat in the walls like static. Every time a car door slammed outside, my shoulders tightened. Every time the wind chimes rattled, I wondered if she was standing out there counting decibels. It was paranoia, sure, but the kind that grows in truth. And then the storm came. The sky went from blue to bruised in minutes. Clouds rolled in heavy and swollen, thunder like distant artillery. The air tasted metallic, and the wind picked up, scattering leaves down the street like whispers. I was on a video call with Leo mid-laugh about the fence ninja incident when it happened. Darkness. Every screen blinked off. The hum of electronics died in unison. Even the clock on the microwave went black. The house was swallowed by silence. Only the faint clinking of the wind chimes outside broke the void. For a heartbeat, I did not move. Then instinct kicked in. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the front window. The rest of the street glowed faintly from porch lights and TVs. Everyone else had power. Just me. A single island of darkness in a sea of electricity. A cold wave crawled down my spine. My cameras, my DVR, my proof, all dead. Coincidence? Maybe. But my gut, that unshakable soldier's instinct inherited from my dad, said otherwise. And then I heard it, a cough. Not from me, from outside. A low mechanical cough like a machine waking up. A second later, the deep rumble of an engine. The generator. My dad's last stubborn project, the one I had argued, was unnecessary. I could still hear his voice that summer we installed it. Power is not a promise, Nate. It is a privilege. Keep a backup. At the time, I had rolled my eyes. Now that hum was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The lights flickered back to life. The cameras rebooted. And with a few keystrokes, my security feed came online again. Rain was slanting across the driveway. And there, 2 houses down, sat a white van. No logos, no license plate light, just idling. Watching. 5 minutes later, as my system finished booting, the van pulled away slow and deliberate, turning the corner like it knew it had been seen. Coincidence? Maybe, but in a war of maybes, I was not betting on chance anymore. I called Sheriff Brody. He arrived 20 minutes later, no sirens, no lights, just an old Ford pickup, dusty and practical like its driver. Brody was not the kind of cop who made noise. He was the kind who let silence do the talking. He sat at my kitchen table, boots creaking on the tile, coffee steaming between us. "All right," he said, voice low, "tell me everything." I showed him the footage, the van, the outage, the timing. He watched it twice, slow, steady, then leaned back. Could be nothing, he said. Could be a contractor. Could be coincidence. He took a long sip. But my gut says it is not. Then I slid the certified letter across the table. He read every word thumb, rubbing the fake seal. When he was done, he exhaled hard through his nose. Well, that is a first, he muttered. HOA using counterfeit government emblems. He pointed at the eagle. See this? Wrong crest. We stopped using that design in 08. She did not even get her forgery up to date. I almost laughed. Almost. Brody leaned forward, elbows on the table. She is smart, Nate. Cunning, even. Everything she has done so far skirts just below criminal. Civil harassment? Sure, but not enough for cuffs. He tapped the seal again. Until now. I frowned. So what do we do? He gave me a look, the kind veterans give rookies before explaining how the world actually works. You have been asking the wrong question, he said. It is not do or do not. It is both. You stand your ground and let us stand behind you when the ground shakes. He reached for his hat. We are not going to chase her, Nate. We are going to let her walk right into her own trap. I felt the gears start to turn in my head. A plan forming. Calculated. Legal. Poetic. What if she thought she had won? Brody mused half to himself. What if she believed you had finally cracked, that the letter scared you into giving up? I tilted my head. Go on. He smiled, a rare thing. She is obsessed with control. So we give it to her, or at least let her think she has got it. You tell her you are done fighting. You tell her you are hauling the truck away for scrap. My stomach twisted. And then, he said, we make sure she shows up to gloat. The plan was simple in theory, risky in execution. Brody knew a guy at the county impound lot could get us a junked pickup, same shape as my dad's. We would park it in the driveway as bait. A deputy would pose as a tow driver, hidden cameras, body cam, audio. Mildred would think she was witnessing her ultimate victory, and in the process, she would cross a line even her fake bylaws could not protect her from. Breaking and entering, conspiracy, fraud, real crimes. The kind that erase smug smiles forever. As Brody left, I walked him to the porch. The storm had passed, leaving the street slick and shining. The air smelled like wet asphalt and new beginnings. He paused at the top step. You sure you are ready for this? He asked. I have been ready since the morning she tried to steal my father's truck. He nodded once. Then get some rest. Tomorrow we catch ourselves a queen. He stepped into the dark, his taillights vanishing into the mist. I locked the door behind him and stood there in the dim light of my living room listening to the faint ticking of the cooling house. The rain had stopped. The generator hummed like a heartbeat. On my desk, the forged letter sat under a paperweight, a trophy of arrogance. I looked at it one last time before turning off the light. Tomorrow, I whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow, the game changes. The morning smelled like metal and wet dust. The storm had rinsed the world clean, but the air still carried that uneasy stillness, the kind that always comes before something breaks. I woke early before sunrise. No alarms. My body just knew. The decoy truck, an old rusted Chevy that Brodus guy had delivered overnight, sat perfectly in the driveway. It looked pathetic. Sagging tires, cracked windshield, dented hood. But from a distance, from her distance, it was close enough to my dad's Ford to light her fuse. I made coffee strong enough to wake a corpse and checked every camera angle twice. Driveway live, garage interior live, front porch live. Then I opened my laptop to the feed from the hidden chest cam that the undercover deputy would wear. Brodus' plan was elegant in its simplicity. Give her a stage, let her write her own downfall. All I had to do was sit still and let the show play, but stillness has never been easy for me. My fingers drummed against the mug, my pulse beating too loud in the quiet kitchen. The clock ticked, 8:05 a.m. Showtime. The unmarked tow truck rumbled into view. It was the perfect disguise, matte gray dented sides, no decals. The deputy behind the wheel looked like he had just crawled out of a 10-hour shift and a bad marriage. He killed the engine, got out, stretched and spat into the gutter, every motion lazy, practiced invisible. Then he walked to the back, unspooling his chains with the rhythm of a man who had done this 100 times. I watched from my window, coffee cooling in my hands. And right on cue, the door across the street opened. Mildred Bishop, hair perfect, suit pressed, clipboard ready. She did not walk, she marched. The kind of gait that says, "The world is out of line and I am here to fix it." I could almost hear the echo of her heels across the asphalt. She stopped at the edge of my driveway, eyes sweeping the scene like a general surveying conquered land. "Open this garage right now," she barked. The deputy barely looked up. "Morning to you too," he muttered, chewing his toothpick. "I said open it," she repeated. "Ma'am," he drawled, "my order is for the pickup in the driveway." She frowned. "No, not that heap. The Ford inside." He squinted, playing dumb perfectly. "Ma'am, I only got what is on the paper. Says, remove one inoperable truck. That is what I am doing." The Ford, she hissed, jabbing a finger toward my garage. "That is the violation vehicle. You will be compensated for your efficiency." Compensated. That word slid out of her mouth like a promise and a threat. The deputy shrugged, pretending to think. "Is not my problem." Locked door. Her smile went thin. "We will handle that." That was my cue to hit record. The sedan showed up 5 minutes later, same gray one I had seen before. 2 men got out, dressed alike in black polos and cargo pants. The kind of uniform you buy online when you want to look official but do not want questions. They did not speak, did not look around, just walked up the driveway and stopped in front of my garage. One tested the handle, locked. The other stepped back, rolled his shoulders, and slammed his shoulder into the door. The steel groaned, bending inward. In the kitchen, my mug rattled on the counter. Every nerve in my body screamed, "Go outside." But Brody's voice replayed in my head. "Let her cross the line, Nate. We cannot arrest arrogance. We can arrest action." So I stayed still, watching the feed from the chest cam. Mildred stood a few feet back, clipboard in hand, face glowing with vindictive delight. "Proceed," she said, crisp and commanding. "Ma'am, this is private property," the deputy said, tone still flat. "The abatement order gives us access," she snapped. "Get it open." Those 3 words, "get it open," were everything we needed. The trap was sprung. The second man hit the door again, harder this time. The sound cracked through the house like thunder. The panel bent the deadbolt, screamed in its cradle, but it held. My dad's old steel rebar brace, the one we had used back when we went on fishing trips, was doing its job. Another hit. The garage light flickered. I backed away from the interior door, fist tight, teeth clenched. "You picked the wrong door," I muttered. Then through the audio feed, another voice broke, the chaos steady, low, unmistakable. "Ma'am, I think that is enough. Sheriff Brody." Right on time. I darted to the side window, heart hammering. He and another deputy were walking calmly up the driveway. No rush, no barked orders, just presence. The 2 men froze, like kids caught shoplifting. Mildred spun around, face pale, smile cracking like glass. "Sheriff," she said, the word trembling between anger and panic. "What is the meaning of this?" Brody tilted his head, eyes sweeping the scene, the bent door, the clipboard, the men. "You tell me," he said. "This man," she started, pointing at the garage, "is in violation of." Brody cut her off with a look that could stop traffic. "Mildred," he said, dropping the title, "you have got a driver here with a body cam that just recorded you ordering a break-in." Her mouth fell open. I have a signed order," she stammered, thrusting the clipboard toward him. Brody took it, glanced at the paper, and gave a soft whistle. "That is a nice seal," he said, flipping it over. "Shame it is fake." Her eyes widened. "You forged a county document, Mildred. You realize that is not just bad manners, that is a felony." The color drained from her face. The deputy beside Brody lifted the body cam. "Got it all, Sheriff. Audio is clear." For a long, painful second, no one moved. Then Mildred laughed, high, brittle, desperate. "This is harassment," she said. "Entrapment. You are all conspiring against me." Brody sighed. "Lady, you conspired against yourself." He turned to the men in black polos. "You two enjoy breaking doors." They shook their heads fast. "Good. You will get a chance to explain that downtown. The handcuffs clicked quiet, efficient final. Mildred's clipboard hit the concrete with a hollow clack. She tried one last line of defense arrogance. "You do not understand," she said as Brody read her rights. "I am protecting this community. Someone has to maintain standards." Brody smiled without warmth. "Standards do not include burglary." She went, silent lips pressed white. I stepped out onto the porch, then unable to stay inside any longer. Her head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. "This is not over, Nathan Hoffman," she spat. I met her glare and said quietly, "It already is." They led her to the cruiser. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Phones recorded. For once, she did not pose for the camera. Brody passed me on the way back, his voice low. "Nice garage door," he said. "Took that hit like a champ. Dad's work," I said. He nodded. "Figures." Then softer. "She is done, Nate. But keep your footage. This is not just HOA nonsense anymore. This is fraud, impersonation, conspiracy. County is going to want every file you have got." I watched the cruiser roll away, red and blue lights flashing off every perfect lawn. For the first time in weeks, I breathed. Back inside, the silence felt different. Not the tense kind. The clean kind. The kind that means a storm has passed, but the air still crackles with what it changed. I sat at my desk replaying the footage. Her voice cold and imperious. "Get it open." The sound of the door bending. Broda's calm interruption. Perfect. Evidence with teeth. I backed up the files twice, printed screenshots labeled timestamps. By the time I finished, the sun had climbed over the rooftops, spilling gold light across my desk. I looked at the dented garage door through the window, a scar of defiance. Some battles leave marks you do not fix. They remind you what you are capable of. As I closed the laptop, a thought slipped through my mind, like smoke. She is gone, but her shadow is not. Because people like Mildred do not build empires for beauty, they build them for control. And when control collapses, they always try to rebuild. The real war, I realized, was just beginning. And this time, I was not the only one who would fight back. For the first time in months, my street sounded different. No leaf blowers, no neighborly complaints, no Mildred Bishop tapping her heels across the asphalt like a metronome of control. Just wind and silence. But it was not peace, not yet. It was the quiet that comes after something breaks. The kind that makes you realize the world does not snap back the way it used to. The HOA sign still stood at the entrance of River Raven, tilted slightly from the last storm, its gold letters glinting in the morning light. Every time I drove past it, I imagined her face pale, furious, uncomprehending, reflected in the cruiser window as they took her away. By noon the next day, the story had spread. Local news vans clogged the street anchors in perfect makeup, standing in my yard like they owned the air itself. "Veteran homeowner uncovers HOA corruption scandal," one headline read. Another called it "The Fall of the Suburban Queen." I did not ask for any of it. But cameras do not need invitations, they smell blood. Sheriff Brody showed up again, wearing that same tired patience, guiding the reporters away from my porch. "You are not the story," he said quietly. "She is. Remember that." I nodded, but part of me wondered if that was true. Because behind every headline, there is a mess. You do not see paperwork, interviews, reopened cases. By the second day, the county fraud division was knee-deep in Mildred's files. And when they opened that metaphorical closet, skeletons came tumbling out faster than anyone could count. Forged tax forms, duplicate signatures, fake meeting minutes approving land donations that did not exist. Half the neighborhood had technically been paying dues to a private account in her cousin's name. It was not an HOA. It was an empire of theft dressed up as order. I sat through hours of interviews with investigators. Dates, documents, every recorded incident. The footage from the body cam became their centerpiece, a perfect unedited confession in motion. By the end of that week, 3 board members had resigned, 2 had lawyered up, and 1 had already flipped. The phrase cooperative witness floated around like a confession disguised as a favor. I did not celebrate, because every win came with a shadow, a new email, a new knock, a new reminder that power does not vanish, it just shifts shape. One afternoon, Brody stopped by again, files under his arm. He looked almost pleased, which for him meant his mouth tilted half an inch. "She has been denied bail," he said. Judge did not even blink. "Good," I said. "She is claiming mental stress. Says the community turned on her." "Blaming you mostly," figures I muttered. He sat down across from me. "You know, Nate, I have seen a lot of bullies. Most fall apart when the badge shows up. But her, she believed she was the law. People like her always do," I said quietly. "They do not want peace. They want obedience." He dropped the folder on my table. "County wants you at the community hearing this Friday," he said. "They are dissolving the HOA officially. Public record." I looked at the folder but did not touch it. "I did not start this for headlines, Brody." "I know," he said. "But you finished it. That counts for something." When he left, the house felt too quiet again, like the walls were waiting for new orders. I poured another cup of coffee, stared out the window at the dented garage door, and thought about all the people who had lived under Mildred's thumb for years, too scared to push back. Friday could not come fast enough. The community center smelled like disinfectant and fear. Rows of folding chairs lined up under flickering fluorescent lights. Neighbors filled the room, some whispering, some glaring, some pretending not to look at me. I recognized them all. The ones who had smiled politely at Mildred's tyranny. The ones who had stayed silent when she fined the widower for painting his door the wrong shade of blue. The ones who had sent anonymous complaints because fear is quieter than courage, and now they were all here to watch her fall. The county clerk read the statement flatly, without emotion. "Effective immediately, the River Raven Homeowners Association is hereby dissolved pending federal audit." No cheers, no applause. Just a low murmur of disbelief, the sound of power collapsing. Then she said my name. For his cooperation, Mr. Nathan Hoffman is recognized for assisting the county in uncovering multiple instances of fraud and forgery. Applause this time. Hesitant, uneven, but it was there. I did not stand. I did not smile. I just nodded once, because the sound felt hollow. Justice does not clap. It just breathes quieter. After the hearing, people approached me. Some shook my hand. Others apologized. A woman I barely knew hugged me and said, "I am sorry we let her run things so long." I told her it was not her fault, but part of me knew that was not true. It was all our fault for pretending peace meant silence. When I got back home, the sun was low, painting long shadows across the street. The HOA sign at the entrance was gone. All that remained were 2 empty holes in the dirt. It looked better that way. That night I sat in my garage, the real one with the new door half, finished the scent of fresh paint mixing with motor oil. My dad's old tools hung neatly on the wall, silent witnesses to everything that had happened. I ran a hand over the hood of the truck, feeling the cold metal under my fingertips. It was not just a machine. It was a promise that I would keep what mattered no matter who tried to take it. A faint knock pulled me from the moment. It was Leo holding a six-pack and that crooked grin that only shows up after trouble dies down. "Thought you might need company," he said, stepping inside. I nodded. "You read the headlines." "Yeah. They are calling you the HOA Slayer." I groaned. "God help me." He laughed, handing me a beer. "Brody called me earlier," he said. "He said the county is expanding the investigation." Apparently, Mildred's cousin was running a full-scale property laundering scheme. Multiple neighborhoods, different states. I froze mid-sip. So she was not just power-hungry, I said. She was building an empire. "Yeah," Leo said. "And you just burned the Capitol." We drank in silence for a while, the hum of the fridge filling the space. Then he asked, "You think she will ever get out?" I shook my head. "If justice holds, no. But even if she does, she will not come back here. This place is not hers anymore." Leo leaned back, looking around. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. Sometimes, I admitted. But this is my dad's ground. My fight started here. Might as well end here, too. He nodded the kind of agreement that does not need words. Outside, the crickets started their quiet chorus, and for the first time, it did not sound like background noise. It sounded like closure. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the county. Not a threat this time, a thank you. They were turning my case into a precedent for new homeowner protection laws, especially for veterans. The irony almost made me laugh. The same system that once failed me was now rewriting itself because of me. I pinned the letter on the fridge, not as pride as proof that paper could heal as much as it could hurt. When I looked at it, I thought about my dad again. His voice, his patience, his belief that right always wins, even if it has to crawl through hell to get there. That night, I walked to the edge of the driveway. The wind chimes still hung there, faintly singing under the moonlight. For months, that sound had been defiance. Now it was peace. The neighborhood was quiet. No more surveillance vans. No more envelopes taped to doors. No more fear of what might be in the mailbox. Just people reclaiming their own lives, one small breath at a time. And me, a man who had gone to war twice. Once overseas and once at home. Funny thing, the second war left more scars. Autumn came early that year. The air thinned, the leaves burned orange, and River Raven finally exhaled. For the first time in as long as anyone could remember, the neighborhood felt alive. Lawns grew a little wild again. Children's bikes leaned carelessly against mailboxes. There were porch lights where there used to be silence, and nobody flinched when the wind chimes sang. It was strange freedom made noise. The kind Mildred would have called visual clutter. To the rest of us, it sounded like home. I spent most mornings in my garage. Not because I had to, but because that space had become my chapel. The dent in the door was still there, faintly visible beneath the new coat of paint, a bruise that refused to fade, and I liked it that way. Some scars belong to the story, you do not sand them out. I would park my dad's truck halfway out, let the sunlight hit the hood, and work with the door open so neighbors could wave as they walked by. Even the quiet ones, the people who used to cross the street when they saw me, had started smiling again. One man dropped off a six-pack. Another offered to fix my porch light. The same community that once hid behind curtains was learning how to be human again. The new HOA board, if you could still call it that, was led by Sarah, a retired middle school teacher with a voice like soft gravel and a spine of steel. She came to my door one afternoon carrying a clipboard, and for a second my pulse spiked old reflexes. But she laughed, seeing my face. "Relax, Nate," she said. "This one is not for fines. It is for ideas." She had proposed something new, a community tool library, a shared shed where people could borrow drills, saws, even gardening tools, the kind of things neighbors used to lend before rules made everyone afraid of liability. I signed up before she even finished explaining. Within weeks, the project was underway. The old HOA office, once Mildred's throne room, was stripped bare and reborn. The walls went from cream arrogance to warm cedar. The smell of paint and sawdust replaced the cloying scent of her floral air freshener. Everyone pitched in. Kids painted signs. Retirees built shelves. Leo brought pizza and bad music, blasting 80 Seconds rock, until someone threw a screwdriver at the speaker. For the first time, we were not working against each other. We were building something together, messy, imperfect, alive. And God, it felt good. I still kept the fake order framed above my workbench. The gold seal gleamed under a strip of workshop light, the embossed eagle glaring with all the false authority it once carried. Underneath it, Mildred's sharp, angry signature, the handwriting of control. It was not revenge, it was reminder, a trophy of what happens when order forgets compassion. Sometimes I would catch myself staring at it while tightening a bolt or wiping oil from my hands, and I would think about my dad, about how he used to say rules were meant to protect, not punish. He had built fences to keep cows in, not people out. I finally understood what he meant. One Saturday, I was tuning the truck's carburetor when Sarah stopped by. You know, she said you could probably run for the board. People would vote for you in a heartbeat. I laughed. I think I have reached my HOA lifetime quota. She smiled. Maybe. But this time, we could use someone who remembers what a fence means. Her words stuck with me long after she left. Maybe she was right. Maybe leadership is not about control, it is about memory. And remembering costs you nothing but pride. A few months later, the tool library opened officially. No ribbon cutting, no speeches, just neighbors showing up with boxes of tools and stories. I donated my dad's old wrench set, the same one we had used on the truck. When I placed it on the shelf, a kid asked, "Why is it all rusty?" I smiled. "Because it is real." He nodded, like that made sense. Maybe it did. Real things rust, age, dent, and still work better than anything shiny and new. The way real people break and rebuild and keep going, that is what community is. Not perfection, just persistence. That evening, I sat on the tailgate of the truck, watching the sun sink behind the houses. The world had turned gold again, the kind of light that forgives everything. Mr. Chen was teaching his daughter to ride a bike down the street. Mrs. Gable watered her new rose bushes, humming something I could not place. Leo shouted from across the road, "We are grilling tonight. You in?" I raised my beer in response. He grinned. Peace was not silence anymore, it was laughter echoing across driveways, and for once I was not watching my security cameras. I did not need to. Later that night, I pulled the truck back into the garage. The engine purred, steady, reliable, the sound of memory alive. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the worn steering wheel, and let the quiet settle. It was not the silence of fear anymore. It was the kind that feels earned. The kind that follows storms and trials and choices you did not think you were brave enough to make. I whispered, "We made it, Dad." The words hung in the air like prayer. Outside, the wind chimes answered. Before I turned off the lights, I looked once more at the framed fake order on the wall, that ridiculous golden seal, that spiky handwriting, and for the first time, I did not feel anger, just gratitude. Because without her arrogance, none of this, the laughter, the tool library, the freedom, would have happened. Sometimes it takes a tyrant to remind people they are free. I shut the light, stepped outside, and felt the night air brush my face. The stars over River Raven were sharp and endless. Somewhere a dog barked, a kid laughed, a door slammed, the ordinary chaos of a living neighborhood. As I reached the end of the driveway, I stopped and looked back. The garage door gleamed under the porch light, dent and all. The wind carried the faint smell of oil and cedar. And I realized something. This was not just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who ever got pushed too far, fined too often, or silenced too long. Every person who had been told they were the problem for daring to belong. We were all standing on the same ground now, scarred, stubborn, and unbroken. The world did not need another rulebook. It needed people who remembered what mattered. Kindness, respect, the right to call a place home without asking permission. That was my father's lesson, and I had nearly forgotten it until Mildred forced me to remember. So when Sarah asked again at the next neighborhood meeting if I would join the new board, I said yes, not because I wanted control, but because someone had to make sure power never forgot where it came from, the people. That was the real victory, not the headlines, not the arrest, the rebuilding. I looked out over the street one last time before heading in. Porch lights flickered like stars. The air was cool, clean, alive. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel like a man defending his home. I felt like a man living in it. And as I closed the door, I whispered the words that had carried me through every fight, every storm, every silent war. You stand your ground the moment someone tries to take a piece of your heart. The wind chimes answered softly, a prayer in wood and wind. And the night my neighborhood finally slept easy.